Poke the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks.
And welcome into episode 359 of Poke the Bear. I am Evan Marinofski. That is Conor Ryan. We are presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, and we're presented by Gametime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And don't forget to subscribe to us over at CLNS Media on YouTube. Go to Bruins Rinkside. We have stuff all throughout the offseason. We have so much coming as we transition from the offseason into the regular season. Podcasts, videos, interviews, scrums, live streams. There's a lot of stuff coming. So go check that out. And if you don't like looking at us, if you just like listening, or as we say, you're driving in the car, you can't watch us, which please go subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get yours from. And there's lots of other great stuff at CLNS. Celtics All Access, Patriots Press Pass. Those are in full swing. Now, this is September 11th. And we're recording this on September 11th, and we will say today, Boston joins the 9/11 Memorial and Museum's tribute in light, born in New York as twin blue beams over Lower Manhattan. At dusk, landmarks across Boston and Cambridge will glow blue. From City Hall, Fenway Park, and the Prudential Tower to the Zakim Bridge, the Hub on Causeway, Berkeley Performance Center, and more. The tribute, now in its second year, was spearheaded by our friends at Gupta Media in Boston. Take a minute to step outside, look up, and remember the lives lost and all who were forever changed. Boston remembers. I'm Evan Marinofski. It's Conor Ryan. Conor, what's up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I assume you are on the recovery bend, hopefully?
A little bit. Still a little bit of a cough. Yeah, still fighting through it. The white blood cells are fighting the good fight, so we'll be back in order in a couple of days. So at least let's hope. If I'm hacking up a lung next week once training camp starts, we got a problem. So
we got a problem. Yes, yeah. That would not be a good thing. That would be a little bit of a problem. Busy week for the Bruins as training camp is right around the corner, as you said, next week. Rookie camp has been this week. I will say, Conor, I had a men's league game at Warrior, this morning, Thursday morning at 7 a.m. And there were a group of rookies walking in the back there as I was stepping, out onto the bench, and all I could think was, please don't look at me. Please don't look at me. Please don't watch any. Please don't watch any of what's about to transpire over the next hour. Please don't watch any of us play hockey. But it's been rookie camp as they go off. They're already off to Buffalo for those games. It's happening all over the NHL. And one interesting thing about rookie camp has been Dans Ločmelis. It seems like he is becoming a bigger and bigger storyline, and it's easy to see why. 12 points last year in 6 Providence Bruins games. That was after a really good season at UMass. I believe it was either 33 or 44 or 40 points, but it was UMass. So, can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Great, incredible program. No bias. And then he went to Worlds with Latvia, 6 points in 7 games, 6'1" center. Recently, the Athletic, they've been doing their redrafts. So in 2022, he went from, I think, pick 119 to number 35. So like early second round pick in the redraft. And it's been 3 or 4 years since the 2022 draft. So you have a good amount to go off of. He's someone that seems like he's going to push for a legit roster spot.
Yeah, I'm really high on Locmelis. Saying that I'm not like tabbing him that he's going to all of a sudden make the team on October 8th or anything like that. But he's a guy that I think you look at his skill set and what he can do, and also just the body of work that he's put together. And I get that it's a small sample size, but I think you try to find things in prospects that kind of, raise your eyebrow to see where a guy could maybe thrive at the NHL level, or where you can see their pro level traits. And it's not often you have a player who is already playing in Hockey East, night in and night out, arguably one of the tougher spots in college hockey. And then you go to Providence and you take another step forward and you play even better, right? To go right from Providence, right as they're like bracing for the playoffs, he goes in and, when he was drafted, even like maybe his first year at UMass, he kind of, had the label of, well, he could be like a solid, two-way third line player, maybe he's more of a fourth line guy, but responsible, makes the right plays, that kind of stuff, which if you're picking a guy in the 4th round, it seems like a worthwhile investment, right? Of that type of player, that type of profile, to then go to Providence and then, have 12 points in 6 games, getting reps on the power play, looking really good there. He had a lot of good chemistry with Matt Patra during his time in Providence. And then to go from there to Worlds, where he has 6 points in 7 games, gets shouted out by Sidney Crosby. He's going up against legit NHL talent. I will say that Lochmelis, I'm not comparing him to David Krejci in terms of his play style, but his the way he talks to the media is very much like Krejci, very, very dry. Because Scott McLaughlin of WEI asked him, to get more clarity on that conversation that Crosby had with Lochmelis at Worlds of complimenting his game, and Lochmelis completely straight face was like, Crosby was saying I'm like the next Gretzky, I'm this unbelievable player, but he said it like so dry, and I feel like, I don't know if it's also he's got a little bit of an accent that all of us didn't really realize that he was clearly messing around, and so we're all just like standing there, and he's looking around like, and then he's like, no, he just like said like, I was good at faceoffs and like was impressed with how I played. So still positive, but he's got a little bit of that very dry humor that reminds me a little bit of David Krejci. The Bruins would be very happy if he's David Krejci on the ice as well. I'm not going to go there yet. But I do think he's a guy that you look at just the level that he's played at, the way that he's elevated his game at every level, be it at the international stage or now in the pro game with the AHL. He's a guy that I think Bruins fans should keep tabs on, even if he doesn't make the team out of camp, which I'm not expecting. If he's like a point per game guy in Providence, he's going to be one of the players that I think is going to get some reps here moving forward. And he kind of reminds me, and I think I saw it on HF board, so I can't take credit for it. But they kind of remind him. Yeah, I was diving through the weeds, but got to see the pulse of some very dedicated Bruins fans. Yes. And they kind of and they said that he could be like a Jackson Blake, right? Who broke out this past year with Carolina, and it was the same thing. I think he was a 4th round pick, was probably more productive in college, but went to the pro game, was putting up good numbers, and then they put him at the NHL level, found a role for him, and he kind of just produces. And that's kind of what you notice with Lochmelis. He's not a physical power forward. He's not a guy that has the straight line speed of a Fabian Lysell, doesn't have an elite shot, but just consistently makes plays, right? And I think if that can translate, you could have someone that's worth keeping tabs on this year if you're a Bruins fan.
I've been in hockey a long time. You have too. Maybe you've heard this before, but my eyebrows raised on Wednesday when Ryan Muginel was talking and said Lochmelis was a coach's binky.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that before. Have you?
Like that term, or like what a binky is?
Well, I know what a binky is, but a coach's binky. I was like, what? What is that?
He was dropping some bangers.
Yeah.
Ryan Muginel is a great coach to talk to.
Yes, phenomenal. But he called Locmelis a coach's binky, and it's a good thing. It means they're reliable. I'm assuming that's what he means. I was like, excuse me? I do think, I agree with you. I don't think Locmelis is making the team out of camp. That hurts me to say. As a UMass guy, I want his number in the rafters as soon as humanly possible. But he's someone who probably does need some more time in Providence. And we'll see. Again, we'll talking about training camp in a bit. And you never know what can happen. Matt Patra a couple years ago, we were notoriously like, he needs time. And hindsight actually might have been go back to junior. But still, you never know. I will say though, it is only 6 games in Providence, regular season games in Providence. You do need some more time down there. You sort of read the tea leaves at the NHL level. Guys like Fraser Minten are probably closer to joining this lineup and making an impact. Matt Patra, same thing. Then you have all those free agents you signed. You have guys like Mark Kaslick and John Beecher already here. So I don't know if now, right off the jump, is the time. I think Locmelis would have to have a killer training camp, a killer preseason where it's we actually can't keep this guy away. Sending him to Providence would be malpractice. I don't see that being the case, but I'm with you. I see him, if he's cooking in his first 2 months in the AHL and it's all right, we can't keep him down there anymore. We got to find a spot for him at the NHL level. Then great. He's reliable. And I think you see with a lot of these prospects, at least Patra, Minten, Locmelis, they're all reliable. And I think for Marco Sturm, who's coming in, you don't have a high-end guy in your pipeline who's in Providence. So you're like, oh, when they come up, they can fit in the top 6 and make an impact immediately. You don't know that you have that guy yet. Blumel could be, Steves maybe, Lysell, we'll see, like all those guys. But like you do have this infusion of middle 6 center types who are reliable at the very least. And I mean, it's one thing for them to come in and make an impact. I think it's another, and we'll talk about Minten in a bit, for these guys to come in and sort of find that next gear, like find that next sort of offensive ceiling. And I'm curious if Locmelis can kind of keep that production going at the NHL level.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest determinant between him and Minten, right? Is you like their profile. You like that. I think they're a safe player to project in time, right? Like I look at a guy like Fraser Minten as a guy that he's going to play, at least 300, 400 games in the NHL, if not more. Like he's just going to be, I think, a very easy player to map out his floor. And I think Locmelis could be someone that is similar, right? Where you like what you like what he could bring at the NHL level in due time. It's just, what is the ceiling going to be? Like, I think the Bruins would love it if Locmelis ends up being a solid third line player, but is he a third line player that, is more of a give you 30 points and play a couple of games here and there? Or is he a guy that could be like a Jackson Blake, right? Where it feels like he could be a 40, 50 point guy that maybe can get bumped up the lineup. I think that's going to be the biggest determinant for both of those players. Two guys who aren't as maybe skilled as James Haggs, right? But I think it's easy to map out that they will be playing NHL games at some point. It's just how high on the depth chart are they going to be?
Yeah, and it's funny because we'll get into Minten in a second, but Minten, Patra, and Locmelis, all 04s, all 21 years old. So they're all sort of just on the cusp of having to make sort of a consistent NHL impact. But I want to get into Minten in a bit. But first, our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I, we make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. And I got to say, Connor, not to brag, but I had a really good one hit this past weekend with all the football going on. And it just, I don't know, PrizePicks just makes it better. You're really into the games and you really, it's just fun. And I hit a 4-pick flex play. I had Demario Douglas and Drake May. Drake May more than 0.5 passing touchdowns. Demario Douglas more than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. I had Lamar Jackson more than 0.5 passing yards, which they have those deals quite a bit. I highly encourage them. And then I had Justin Jefferson more than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. So I was cooking. Hopefully that continues. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Who doesn't want to be right? I mean, come on. We all want to be right. So PrizePicks.
I'm usually not. So
yeah, that's my problem too.
We'll save that for the predictions episode, Evan.
That's right. Well, PrizePicks probably doesn't want to be associated with our predictions episode.
Yeah,
PrizePicks
exactly.
You know what? We're gonna pass.
You
don't have to talk about us in that episode.
Yeah. Exactly.
Fraser Minten spoke to the media as well on Wednesday. We talked to him. And what I loved was when Bridget Proul asked him, I think it was Bridget from WEI, asked him something along the lines of what's it going to take to stick at the NHL level? And he was like, well, if I knew, I probably would. And so I thought, all right, Fraser, good for you. He, to me, I think is the most of the three, has that skill set of reliable middle 6 center, can play in most situations, has the size. They talk a lot about maturity with him, I think physically and mentally. To me, I and we'll get into training camp storylines in a bit and early season storylines as well, but I'm really intrigued by what he can be. And then is there an offensive ceiling? And he even said yesterday, I don't think I'm going to be a 30 goal or a 60 point guy as a rookie. We'll see if that happens, throughout his career at all. But I am curious if there's a little bit more of an offensive upside there potentially as well.
Yeah, I think he's a player, and Ryan Mougenot kind of mapped out what I think we've all heard about Fraser Minten. He said, at the trade deadline, he finds out that Minten's heading to Providence. He checks his phone and gets texts from like hockey coaches and people he knows just in the hockey world that are just singing Minten's praises of him as a player, his maturity, all that stuff. And then he said he even got texts from people who aren't even associated with hockey, who just know Fraser, who had a lot of good things to say about him. That's kind of what you hear about him as a player, his maturity, as you said, like he's 21 years old. Sure looks like it. Looks like, a guy that is still years away from being in the NHL, even though he's played games already with both Toronto and Boston, but has a really mature approach. Like Evan was mentioning, like his details and how good he is and how he projects as a two-way player and how, coaches and players, when you get to the NHL, you get paid to win. So like, yeah, I'm going to do those sorts of things that are going to keep me in the lineup because the coach is going to trust me to back check and make those small plays that maybe don't reflect on the score sheet, but it's stuff that makes him a coach's binky, right? In terms of to have that, that'll be the name of this episode. But
coach's binky.
But a guy that can play in all situations, a coach can trust, can put him in different spots, and that's kind of what you like about Fraser Minten. I agree that I think the biggest question mark for him isn't whether or not he's an NHL player, right? I think he's going to carve out a role as a regular with the Bruins or wherever he might land, right? But I think it comes down to what his offensive upside is going to be. I kind of project him more as like a Chris Kelly, maybe Charlie Coyle, like, what's his peak going to be? Is it maybe more of, 35, 40-ish points, right? Like 15 goals, something like that. But he anchors your third line center spot, which again, if you have a guy that can play in all situations, can win faceoffs, can contribute on the penalty kill as a key piece there, and can add just some 5-on-5 scoring there on the side, you got a pretty useful asset there. And so I think that's kind of what I view Minten is. It's just how soon can he reach that role? Like I think it'd be a best case scenario if at the end of this year Minten's in that third line spot and the Bruins, even regardless of how this year plays out, you look at a guy like Minten and you can say, all right, our third line's set, at least a guy down the middle. This is a guy that we can put in behind, Haggs, Lindholm, those types of players. That's someone who I think you want to see him kind of take that spot moving forward going into this year.
Well, you mentioned Coyle, and I think Coyle's an interesting comp because I thought one of those underrated parts of the last deadline for them. They got a lot for Coyle, they got a lot for Carlo, but they sort of they replaced Coyle in the future with Fraser Minten. And I thought that like you replaced a future your current 3C with a future 3C who, could have a higher ceiling. You never know. And I think, I am curious to see because like it does seem like third line center is a real roster battle, real lineup battle. And I think, we talk about Matt Patra and Locmelis and Minten and other guys. And I think to me, like Minten's got to show it in camp, but Minten kind of has all the ingredients that I think like a Marco Sturm coming in, playing the way that he wants this team to play. That's how Minten operates. And I think that's my thing where like with Minten, if I had to, like if we were doing odds on who the favorite is for 3C, wouldn't Minten be number one coming out of camp?
I would probably say so. I think Patra is another really interesting candidate, but it almost feels like now the Bruins don't have to be more cautious, but I think they want to like bring him into camp and see just what to expect from a guy like Patra, right? Like, as you said earlier in this episode, like they probably pushed him way too early, right? Like he probably could have used a lot more of a slow and steady approach to his development. So I think Marco Sturm and the Bruins should bring Patra in, see what he can do, see how he produces in the preseason. If he lights it up like we saw 2 years ago, maybe that changes the approach, right? But I think if you're looking like everyone's starting from scratch, everyone's starting from the same level, and you're just trying to find which of the younger players is the safest bet to, take that 3C spot, I think there's a lot to like about what a guy like Minten can provide. And even if like, let's say he starts the year in Boston, Minten, and the offensive numbers aren't anything crazy, he plays 70 plus games and he got 21 points. Like, I still think that's a guy that is going to grow more offensively, right? Like, as long as he's playing every day, he's, winning faceoffs, doing the little things that is going to ingratiate himself and build trust with Marco Sturm and the coaching staff. I think that's the important thing. And then you let the offense go from there. Like, to what Minten said, I'm not expecting a 30-goal, 60-point season from him. I'm not expecting 20 goals. But I think as long as he can carve out that role and take that starting spot at some point this season, the offense will come. And I think if it ends up being 35, 45 points and he is kind of like what you expected from Charlie Coyle. I know he had that 160-point year, but I think we all saw that was an outlier. But, I think when Coyle was here and was, playing at his best level, even though it would be like that 45-point range, you saw his impact beyond just the points, right? You saw like how important he was winning matchups, driving play on the third line, getting his line mates involved. And you could see where his value really was as kind of a Swiss Army knife on that Bruins roster. And I think Minten can kind of be that role. Yeah, can chip in 5-on-5, but can play a key role in the PK, can play a lot of minutes, can be put in a lot of spots by Sturm and the coaching staff to execute with whatever they really need. So I really do like what Minten could be for this team, especially in the future. But I think right now he can make some sort of an impact.
Yeah, I absolutely, I completely agree. One thing that Minten should do if he ends up staying in Boston, he's got to download the Gametime app. Oh my God, Fraser, download the Gametime app because Gametime is back, and they couldn't have come back at a better time. College football season is back, and it's one of the most fun times of the year. Tailgates, hyped up crowds, and incredible finishes. The downside, though, can often be the process of getting tickets, queues, annoying login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. We don't like that. But the Gametime app is here to save you. It gives the advantage back to fans, and it's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps. It's incredibly easy to use, and the Gametime guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, thank God, fees are always included. So what you see is what you pay. This weekend, the Red Sox host the Yankees. It's a huge series, and you can get in Friday's game. Listen to this. For $151 in the third base pavilion, which Gametime ranked as a top 1% value. I have sat up there. That is a steal. That is a complete steal for the Yankees on a Friday night in a wild card race. Gametime has it ranked as a super deal and top 1% of value. So take the guesswork out of buying college football or any sport tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Go download the Gametime app. So, training camp next week begins. It begins next week. I know a lot of NHL guys have already been skating consistently. They had captain's practices last week, but it begins. Now we have something to go off of, which is Chef's Kiss. Very fun. What's your we're going to get into a couple storylines here, but what's your number one thing? Like, what's the thing that when I say storylines in camp, it pops into your head? What is it?
Yeah, I would say, Evan, my number one storyline isn't like looking at one part of the roster or what line combination or anything like that. I think it's maybe more overarching of what identity Marco Sturm wants to build with this team, right? And I think as much as you can look at other previous training camps, you've seen instances where you can kind of tell right away, like what the tone is going to be or what type of team a coach is trying to mold his group into. Like when Claude Julien gets fired and they bring in Bruce Cassidy after years of Claude's system, which was winning hockey, but not the most riveting product on the ice. Like Cassidy had them flying around. They were peppering the net. And you kind of saw that right from the first training camp, from first practice rather, of like, wow, he's overhauling the system. And then I think you kind of noticed from like when Montgomery was there, like their approach offensively, you even kind of noticed it of like the drills they were having, the way they were playing in camp, of what they were trying to build with kind of a new system in place. And again, like I think Marco Sturm has mentioned it time and time again that he's done like talking about like what he wants to do. He wants to kind of just implement it on the ice. And so from what we've heard from him in the past, right, it's all about effort, putting pucks on net, kind of changing their approach offensively, making some tweaks defensively as well. So I think it's all about kind of just what you're going to see from the first couple of days of camp of the effort level, their offensive approach, what they're trying to do. And I think that's what it is going to come down to. We've mapped out what this team has to do to be a competitive group, right? The defense has to rebound, Jeremy Swayman, the power play, all that sort of stuff, but also like what kind of lift can Marco Sturm and the coaching staff provide, right? Where they clearly look at this team and see that changes have to be made with their systems. How do you go about doing that? And what are we going to see right from the get-go? Because I think you're going to see a lot more of a changed approach in terms of the offensive, like I think an emphasis on the forechecking, shot volume is going to go up, but what other tweaks are they going to be that I think we can glean pretty early on during training camp?
So I remember an interview Sturm did with the with Chicklets, and he mentioned something along the lines of like everybody's trying to copy the Panthers. I don't know. Like, I obviously, yes, but I think they kind of have I think that might be the direction they're trying to head in, at least if you look at those free agent signings. And I think when you mentioned like forechecking and getting on top of teams and being super physical, that's Florida. So I agree. I think that's his top storyline. Mine is sort of along the lines of what we talked about earlier. Who breaks out? Who are the prospects that rise? And how much? I mean, obviously they're going to get a lot of playing time in scrimmages and preseason games, no question. But how do they earn Sturm's trust in those first few weeks of camp? How good are they? How good are they in drills? How about in those battle drills? Does Matt Patra get pushed around in one-on-ones? How is Minten offensively? Those types of things. Locmelis, Lysell. How is Fabian Lysell throughout this camp? Is there a chance that you could pencil him into the top 9 wing spot, or is he back in Providence? So, like, to me, it's those prospects who emerges, and they've mentioned this so many times, and we always doubt them. Do any prospects outplay veteran guys? Like, I'm curious if that happens, because coaches always say that, and we're like, I'll believe it when I see it, and I still feel that way. But does that happen? Does Matt does Patra bump someone? Does Locmelis bump someone? You think about, like, people have mentioned this before, like, does someone bump like Victor Arvidsson potentially out of the top 6? So, like, to me, that's what I'm watching. It's the younger guys. Makes sense given my job as editor of New England Hockey Journal. I'm used to watching younger players, so I guess that falls in line. But I do think that's the most interesting thing with this team. Can anybody come out of that? And has anyone gotten so much better or is kind of coming into their own over the offseason that they are better than we previously anticipated and make a bigger lineup impact than we thought?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when we've mapped out what this team needs to do to get back to being a competitive team with the defense, the goaltending, the power play, all that stuff. And I'd probably put power play as another thing to keep tabs on, of just how they maybe switch some stuff around there with Steve Spott coaching the man advantage now. But what is going to add more variance, maybe raise their ceiling, is going to be, if any of these younger guys can step into these roles and can succeed. Can the Magic Genie wish 18 goals from Matej Blumel, right? Can he be a guy that sticks right away? Can someone like Locmelis make a push, or Patra, or Fraser Minten, or someone like that? So if one of those other guys really surprises and looks like an actual NHLer right out of the gate, I'm not saying that's going to like be the one thing. Like Blumel hitting is not going to, I think, be the key factor in this team making the playoffs. But as you're the Bruins, you're trying to find ways to build this core back up and, fill this roster with guys that are going to be here for the long haul. I think this year, kind of like last year with finding out that Morgan Geeky's a key piece for this team, you got to find the other guys that you can put in as the ancillary secondary options behind the usual suspects, the Pasternaks, McAvoys, Lindholms, Swaymans, all those types of guys. Let's see who else can really kind of step up. I think we'll be able to get our first glimpse of that once training camp starts.
Once it starts, I can't wait. I'm excited, Connor. What can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read my stuff over at the Globe and Boston.com. You've covered every step of the way, starting with training camp and going all the way through the Bruins 25-26 season. So read all my stuff over there. You can also follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that, but this podcast isn't over. One more thing. Make sure to go subscribe to Bruins Rinkside on YouTube. We have stuff coming all the time. Podcasts. You guys know it. You see it. 6 podcasts a week between Bruins Beat, Poke the Bear, and Pucks with Haggs. And if you don't like watching us, if you just like listening, make sure to go subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts from. Apple, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon, I think, has one. Everybody's got one, and we're everywhere. So you can find us anywhere. And there's also lots of other great CLNS content out there as well. Patriots Press Pass, Celtics All Access, all that fun stuff. That's Poke the Bear. Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofski. You Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your week.